Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Remodelers on the Rise. The thing we're going to talk about today, we're talking to remodelers. You are listening to this, you are most likely a remodeling business owner. And besides providing a wonderful end result for your clients, beautiful finished project, we also want a beautiful process from start to finish. And I think the words customer satisfaction, client service are kind of platitudes, and we've heard it over time, and we kind of maybe just set it off to the side. What I have learned and what I know to be true is that you can train excellent client service. You need to be training even maybe some of those rough around the edges lead carpenters you have, even everybody from top to bottom in your organization. We need to focus some time and training and attention on what does it look like for us to provide a wonderful experience for our clients and provide them with a wonderful client satisfaction and experience. So I share all of that to set a little bit of a tone for the topic we're digging into today. I have a wonderful, not only trainer, but keynote speaker, Elnian. It says keynote speaker on your bio. Pretty fancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I earned it. I had to earn my stripes.
Darn right. I have Elnian Gilbert. She's with ZingTrain. Some of you have heard of Zingerman's. Zingerman's is a wonderful organization. They do training. Elnian, I'll let you kind of introduce that a little bit more. But we are going to be digging into customer service. What is a leader's role in providing great customer service and training their team? That's what we're going to dig into today. And Elnian, can you introduce yourself so they know who we're talking to, and also a little bit about Zingerman's or ZingTrain, and then we'll dig into the topic.
Yeah, sure. So I'll introduce Zingerman's first because I think it'll make my story make a little bit more sense. So Zingerman's is predominantly food businesses that are all located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We started as a single delicatessen in 1982. And now we have 10 different businesses that are all in the Ann Arbor area and are all food related. ZingTrain is the biggest departure. We've been in business, it'll be 30 years next year. And what we do is we share Zingerman's approach to business. And we came about because people kept asking, like, how do you get your staff to give you such great service? What are you doing around leadership? And we know what we were doing. So we figured, okay, well, we can teach you this. And that is what our business is. What I really like about what we do is that we teach what we do. This is not theoretical. This is very practical, boots on the ground, tools and resources that anyone can use in any industry. So I started with Zingerman's. We're coming up on 17 years ago. I was a temporary seasonal employee at our mail order business that does 50% of their annual sales in the 2 months leading up to Christmas. Wasn't going to keep my job there. They were very clear they weren't going to keep me, which was fine because I was going to have a career. I was going to go get a real job. So all these years later, the joke's really on all of us that I'm still here. So my job at mail order did end after the holiday season. I sold food over the phone, handled a lot of complaints. In fact, and now I'm a trainer for ZingTrain and keynote speaker, which means I get to travel around the country. I was just in Knoxville, Tennessee yesterday, doing all different kinds of training around our approach to business. I was going to say one of the fun things, one of the biggest, most memorable complaints I handled in that holiday season of 2006 was for a customer. We'll call him Harvey. He's a lawyer. He's in California. And we're still in touch. I've had dinner with him and his wife out in Napa. He came to some ZingTrain seminars. His birthday was last week, and I texted him to say happy birthday. So all these years later, even though our first contact was a big, complaint scenario that I actually mishandled, because of the service recovery and the tools that we had, was able to build a relationship with Harvey that's lasted all this time.
Very cool. And Elnian and I met each other several months ago, but she came and spoke. Speaking of keynote, she was a keynote speaker at a Remodelers VIP Club in-person event back in May in Ann Arbor. So got all the VIP Club members got to be immersed in her knowledge for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So here we are following up on that. And if I were just to kind of open it up and just say, what is a leader's role in great customer service? And I just kind of said, take that in the direction that you think would be of value to our listeners. What direction would you take that?
Well, I think there's it's both complicated and simple, right? I think in the complicated, it's providing good systems around customer service. So what do you want people to do? How do you want them to handle different situations? Giving them tools and resources. One of our favorite things is the power of language, but that needs to be created out of somewhere. The power of language is is a chart that we use that is it makes me crazy when you say this, so say this instead. And here's why. It's not enough just to say don't say that, because then people just hyperfixate on that. But giving them developing tools and resources and systems, and that does take time, and it's not what often leaders think about as a predominant responsibility.
Hold that thought, because they're already getting value though. So if they went to the link that we have in here, they're going to find that an example of the power of languages or not?
I think we might have one in our, we have a library of resources. If not, I can share one with you directly and you can share it with other people.
So if you go to ZingTrain.com/training, Zing, Z-I-N-G, train.com/training, and look up the power of language. And so even as you continue on, good leaders provide good systems around customer service, some tools and resources. And one of the first places you went was the power of language. When I pull that up, avoid "you should."
Yeah.
Instead, try "would you please" or "would you mind."
Yeah.
Instead of "I have to," "I'm going to," or "I'd like to." Very tangible, practical examples of, hey, we need to make sure that we train around the language that we want to use, because that matters when we're interacting with our clients.
Yeah. There are so many things that we say with good intentions that have just unintended consequences for customers. It's an immediate turn off, right? One of mine is when people say "no problem" to me, like in a service setting. I'm like, why? Why would it be a problem? It's literally your job. Why is it a problem to get me a glass of water? Okay, cool. Now I know where we're at.
Versus so "you're welcome" or "my pleasure" or "happy to help. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm a Midwesterner through and through, so sometimes I'll throw in a "you bet."
You betcha.
Not a "you betcha." I'm not.
I think you have to be from Wisconsin,
right,
in order to say "you betcha."
I'm more of a "you bet" kind of gal.
Okay.
But what I like about this too is that having these tools and these systems make it easier for not only the owner, the manager, to teach other people what they want them to do around customer service. It makes it easier to hand off that responsibility as well. So when I started working at ZingTrain, right, it was in a different role, but I realized I wanted to be a trainer. I love training. I love teaching people customer service and training and leadership and all the things. But when I started teaching our internal class, I was a frontline employee too. Right? But I got certified to teach the class. I had a leader's guide and a workbook to use. And that takes a lot of the onus off of the leaders and managers. And it also elevates the level of customer service for the people who are teaching the classes. So I became a better service provider when I started teaching, because I was paying attention to what I was doing in a different way. So I think there's multiple levels of benefit to that. It also makes it easier. I mean, we teach performance management. It makes it easier to hold people accountable when you actually have service systems to refer to. Like, hey, I noticed, we use the 10-4 rule here, which is that when you come within 10 feet of someone, you make eye contact and smile. When they come within 4 feet, you verbally greet them, right? It can just be hello. It doesn't have to be a question, but the expectation is that you're using the 10-4 rule with everyone you come into contact with it includes your coworkers. And that's a behavioral performance expectation that the manager can then say to someone who's not doing it, hey, this is an expectation for you. What's going on? Right? Like, do you need a mirror, in front of you so that you can be aware of people walking up behind you? Are there other tools and resources that you need? Or did you just really need the reminder that no, for real, you're expected to do this?
So the leader's role in great customer service, the direction you were taking that was, having good systems, We mentioned the power of language. You just mentioned the 10-4 rule. Any other little best practices around some of those tools and resources that are kind of real practical for a remodeler to be able to just grab a hold of?
Well, I think, we have 3 steps to giving great service. We have 5 steps for effectively handling a complaint. Every person in every position is expected to use them in every interaction. I mean, not every interaction is a complaint, right? So you would use the 3 steps until you know it's a complaint, in which case you shift to the 5 steps.
Yep.
But that also, I think, makes it easier for people in different positions, is that it is not a question whether or not you give good service, if you're internal, people often, we've done work with remodelers, we've done work with people in all different kinds of industries. And, I remember very specifically a carpenter coming up to being like, I really didn't think customer service was my job. I thought I was just supposed to show up and build stuff. But turns out I actually need to have good interactions with the homeowners.
Yeah.
It was like, what a light bulb moment.
Yeah. Come on. That's why we're here. Come on in.
That's going to serve you well in the rest of your career.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a young man, and I was just like, oh, God, I love those moments as a trainer, too.
Yeah. As you were going through the training with the VIP club, the 3 steps to giving great service, and the other thing you just mentioned, the 5 steps for effectively handling complaints, those jumped out at the participants, because I think customer service and giving great service, it feels very floaty, and you're either gifted at it or you're not, but it can be very structured. Can you just give the listeners a quick overview of the 3 steps, and maybe even the 5
So
5
the 3 steps are, the first step is that you figure out what the customer wants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the second, so I'm just going to go through them and then I'll talk about them. So you figure out what the customer wants, you get it for them accurately, politely, and enthusiastically, and then you go the extra mile, right? So it's not rocket science. It is not always easy, but those steps are simple for anyone in any position to be able to do. And you'll notice there's no food words in there, right? So they're very universal. They can apply in a lot of different settings.
Sure.
So when we think about figuring out what the customer wants, well, we try to start interactions on a positive note, which is why we have the 10-4 rule, right? To give people some tools on how to start to engage with the customer. We talk about asking leading questions that people can't say yes or no to. As a society, we've trained people that the answer to "can I help you" is "no thanks, I'm just looking." So, what can I help you with today? What can I do for you? Having just kind of opening the door, I think, is really beneficial. I also think that there's often detective work that needs to happen, especially for remodelers in step 1. Because people might have an idea in their head, but they're not using the right language, especially if they've never done remodel before. They may have seen things on HGTV that are not actually feasible for them in their own home, right? So part of figuring out what they want is teasing all of that out and then starting to be able to narrow the scope of what can we actually do for you, because then getting it for them, we want to be on the same page. We want to be using the same language. We want to have the same expectations of what the end result is going to look like and what this process is going to look like. This is not something, I feel like all of those remodeling shows really did remodelers a disservice with how fast things can get done. And they don't always explain the quality of work that they're doing on those shows. I've heard enough.
Which, by the way, how's that deck project that you were embarking on back in May?
It's on pause.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Story for another day.
I need to get a couple more quotes. My first quote took me aback. So,
understood. So step 1, figure out what the customer wants. Step 2, get it for them accurately, politely, enthusiastically. Yeah. There's just great training right there. Yeah. And then number 3,
go the extra mile.
Go the extra mile.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to point out too that enthusiastically, I can almost always feel people rolling their eyes at that one. It doesn't mean over the top, visible enthusiasm. It really means making a personal connection with the person that you're talking to. So it's it's getting to know people when you're going to be in their home for several months. It's remembering their name, remembering their kids' names or their pets' names, and building that kind of dynamic. And I think that the more that we really figure out what the customer wants and pay attention to them and don't interrupt them, build that dynamic, the more we are nailing that enthusiastically piece.
Love
And
that.
then the extra mile is simply doing something extra for the customer that they didn't ask for or don't expect. So I've
Love it.
heard great ones of like, someone finishes like a kitchen remodel. Like the last thing that the team does is to leave a bouquet in a vase right on the counter of the kitchen so that people see it the first thing when they walk in, right? They're going to be delighted by having the job done and having their brand new beautiful kitchen. But like that one little extra touch that doesn't cost a huge amount of money, people remember those gestures, and when they go to recommend you to someone else, those are the things that they really like to highlight. So the extra miles are the fun stuff too.
Yeah. So what we just talked about, Zingerman's 3 steps to giving great service. What I think is interesting about this is, one, the people listening to this, you guys could write that down. Number 2, you go to zingtrain.com/train and you can learn more about it and how it approaches. But I can see printing this page out and doing a training and saying, all right, let's use some examples.
Yeah.
What's an example from the past week or two of something that a customer came to us with, and how did we handle it? And if we were to follow these 3 steps to giving great service, what would we have done differently? Or let's practice something that might come up in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Practicing, and it's interesting just reviewing this of going, oh man, this training was awesome 2 months ago when we did it. Now you have to do the work to really implement it. And I'm not going to allow you to share the 5 steps for effectively handling complaints, because I'm going to tell people to look it up and study it, because it's just as good as the thing we just covered. Yeah. I'm going to go back to leader's role in great customer service. What else is coming to your mind of what people should be focusing on and doing?
Well, I think one of the things that, there's all these kind of like little tips I like to think of when we talk about the leader's role. One of them is, while we're not talking about the 5 steps here, it's to not only handle complaints behind closed doors, right? Often a leader or a manager like gets a complaint phone call, they go into the office and they shut the door. But I know for myself, I learned so much by hearing how the managing partners, hearing how the other trainers were talking to customers. I mean, not just complaint situations, but like, how did they handle that? What were I could hear kind of what the answers were, so I could intuit what the questions were. Mm. But when I became a trainer as my job, I was so much better able to step into that role because I had years worth of experience hearing how these really consummate professionals were handling these different situations, right? How they stayed calm, even when the customer is very challenging. I had great examples, and I think that, modeling is great, but even those just subtle moments of leaving the door open while you're handling a conversation, it's a little thing. It's easy to do. And then, to go hand in hand with that, especially if it's something that's been handed off, right? And then the manager is the one who takes a call, or the owner is the one who ends up like resolving things with the customer, going back to the frontline service provider to say, this is what ended up happening. This is what I offered them. This is what they agreed to. Like, next time I would like it if you would do X, Y, and Z, or you did this exactly right. I just have a long-time relationship with this client, and I know what they were going to be looking for. So, you did everything right. And this situation, I did more than we would normally do for a customer because of this long-time relationship. Or whatever. I think there's just the kind of closing the loop on that is really helpful, especially if you need to come in and say yes to something that you've asked your employees to say no to.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to feel leapfrogged over. And I know there are often good reasons for doing it, but giving that explanation of, I made an exception, here's why.
Yeah. There's going to be, guess what? It's July 2023. In July 2026 and 29 and 37, whatever AI does and all the robots that are working on our job sites, customer service and managing problems and challenges and complaints will, for the rest of your business career, everybody listening to this, will be an important skill to learn and to improve and to train on. And even 2 things you described there. One, don't hide behind it. Make sure people can hear it. That's a great piece. And then just as importantly, we don't do this enough in our business just in general, to go back and to review and to say, what did we learn here? What worked? What didn't? Here's what I would do differently next time. We need to slow down enough to make sure we're doing that, because that so often is where the great improvement can happen. Another thing that you shared with the VIP club were phrases that have a calming effect. And I can see if you go to zingtrain.com/training, you'll see it. And this is just something you can print out and practice. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. You are absolutely right. I'm sure we can find a solution. I want to resolve this for you. Unless you're purposeful and you're practicing those things, those are usually not the phrases that are coming out of our heated, kind of frustrated mouths when we're dealing with challenges.
Yeah, this is a great resource. I know many people have just printed it and hung it by the phone, right?
Yeah.
So that they can just kind of rotate through the expressions. My personal calming phrase is "tell me more." Right? It's really hard for people to escalate in a complaint situation when you're actively seeking to get more information to be able to resolve it.
Yeah.
I also think that one of the things that is really useful for leaders is to express the value of customer service that goes beyond just that it makes us more money, right? Because we do an exercise in our internal training around like building a common understanding around customer service. So why do we do it? It's not just to make more money. It's because it's a differentiator. Referrals go up significantly when people have a good experience with you. They are more willing to book with you again, right? To tell all of their friends and family. That's true for us too. I mean, we are predominantly a referral based business. We don't do a lot of traditional advertising, which, I mean, you could argue that we should. I would agree. But we do so much that's word of mouth, and that is marketing you cannot pay for. You can earn it over time. Yep. And so helping people understand, I mean, so I mentioned in May, I need to rebuild my deck. Not personally, I'm going to hire someone to do it, to be abundantly clear. I have no interest in actually building a deck. And I have just had some really poor customer service experiences with people not getting back to me. Yep. I fill out the form on your website and it's just crickets for all time. I've called and not gotten messages back. So there are some of those things that it's not always easy to stay on top of it, right? I know staffing levels have been a challenge, but like, not only am I not interested in working with those companies, I'm not going to chase you down to make you do this work so that I can give you like $10,000, right? Like, I would just give me a call back is all I want. So, it's those little things that make such a big difference in the overall customer's experience with you. And that if you need to get more help with it, it doesn't always have to be the right person to call someone back, but as long as someone calls them back, right? Or like replies and says, hey, we got your form submission. People are like, we're scheduling like 4 months out to even have our introductory conversation.
Yeah. That's kind of where you're going of why do we care about client service? Yeah. And the idea of we want to give them a wonderful or even a remarkable experience. Yeah. And that's the why. That's the root of it. That's part of who we are as a business is we are going to go above and beyond for our clients. Does that mean our clients are always right? Does that mean our clients walk all over? No, not necessarily. Yeah. But that is in the fabric of who we are is we want this to be a wonderful experience. Part of the reason I was super excited to have you in May is, Jeff and Monica with Forward Design Build in Ann Arbor, they had you in to do a training. And I think, so to the remodelers listening to this, especially if you're part of Remodelers community, you may have seen Jeff's name pop up over time, and he's been a guest on the podcast. Here is a remodeler who is investing in customer service training. Why? Because we care about the experience our clients are receiving. And frankly, if I'm a carpenter, if I'm a project manager, if I'm a designer, if I'm the person, taking the phone calls and doing the first impressions, and so many business professionals and working professionals have not ever had training on customer service. No. It's just such a rare thing. So here you're listening to Elnian and I talk, and we're talking about here's the outline for the 3 steps to great customer service. Here's the 5 steps when a complaint comes in. Hey, there's the power of languages. You had the no problem. My big one, which a lot of people have, is, well, to be honest with you, every time I hear it, it's just like nails on a chalkboard. Yeah. My friend, you need to be honest with me the whole time. You drive me nuts when you say it. And then calming phrases. If we are not purposeful in training and practicing these, We're not, and to your point, a little bit of effort in this and a little bit of training goes such a long ways.
Yeah. And it's not every organization that takes the time and invests, right? The time and money to do that work. But I think the exceptional organizations are the ones that do, that understand that priority and that we hire a lot of people where it's their first job. So, people don't learn customer service at home typically. So they got to learn it somewhere. If you want them to do things the right way, if you want them to do things the way that you want them to do, you got to define what that actually means and then teach them what's expected. So there is, I think, a real expectation for leaders. The other thing that I think this makes a big difference is you get consistency, where you don't have to only talk to Joe because he's going to give you the experience that you want. You can call anyone on the phone and they're going to be like, wow, that's a great question. Let me find out for you. Right? They don't have to be the right person, but you're going to get a good experience. The other thing I really like about our service approach, our service recipes, so to speak, is that they're one size fits one. They're not one size fits all. So this customer in this interaction, this coworker in this interaction, how am I going to figure out what they want right now? How am I going to get it for them accurately, politely, and enthusiastically? And then how am I going to go the extra mile? We do drop the extra mile for coworkers more than with customers.
Yep.
However, someone bringing you a favorite treat, that's just an energy elevator. I know my colleague Timo loves Diet Coke, really loves Diet Coke.
Has a problem, too much Diet Coke?
Almost.
Okay.
So if I ever want to boost his energy, though, just drop a Diet Coke on his desk, right? Or we're going to do a workshop together, show up with a 20 ounce of Diet Coke and just, right? So it's those little things. They don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be big, but it elevates the service experience. And no one needs to give you permission to use the 3 steps, right? They just work.
Yeah.
And if you can systematize it, if you can do it consistently, that's great. But if you're listening to this and you're not a boss or an owner, or the manager, you can still use these steps to elevate the level of service that you're personally delivering.
Yeah. And if somebody's been listening to this whole podcast, you just heard, wait a minute. Yes, 1-to-1, everything's unique, but there's a framework. We said it earlier. There's 3 steps to giving great customer service. We're going to say it a 4th time. Figure out, number 1, what the customer wants. Number 2, get it for them accurately, politely, enthusiastically. Number 3, go the extra mile. If I can walk up to somebody in your organization and say, over the last year, as you guys have done team meetings, you guys have done a lot of training on great customer service. What were those 3 steps again? When it's trained enough and consistently enough that they could repeat back that, now we're getting somewhere. It's going to be so incredibly hard for us not to have improved our customer service if we've gotten to that point. If you go to zingtrain.com/training, there is virtual training. There's all kinds of different trainings that they have. Some that are kind of live coming up, some that are recorded. And Elnian gave a little discount code. You get 20% off all online training when you purchase it if you just type in Remodelers with an S 23. Remodelers 23, and it'll /20% off the already wonderfully affordable trainings that you'll find on ZingTrain.com/training. How'd I do there?
That was great. Thank you.
That's pretty good. Yeah. And we'll put it in the show notes as well. I was aiming with this podcast to get people to think about customer service in a little bit more of a framework and a process-driven way. And for us to also think, hey, if you're a leader of a remodeling business, it's your job. It's one of the hats you wear to train your team on customer service. And I've loved everything we've touched on already. And I think it's been very helpful. Are there 1 or 2 other nuggets that you would like to leave the people with around these topics?
One. So you mentioned something earlier that I think I want to circle back to, which is that often people have the idea that things like customer service are soft skills that people either get or they don't get, and we don't believe that's true. We believe that almost everyone with coaching and training and clear expectations will be able to deliver on whatever your expectations are. And that we can often do people a disservice when we expect them just to magically know what's in our mind and how we want them to behave. So, the better that we can be explicit about our expectations and share them, just the more we set everyone up for success, including our customers. So I think that's a really key one. The other thing is that you do not need to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, we do a lot of customer service training. There are other customer service training organizations.
Oh, please.
Well, I mean, but the idea is that just pick something and then stick with it, right? Our approach, I think, works really well. It's very universal. It's been used in a bunch of different industries. But like if you're already using like the Disney approach or the Ritz-Carlton or Fish, just to name 3 competitors, that's okay. What I think the hardest thing about customer service is doing it all the time in every single interaction. That just takes a lot of practice.
It takes a lot of practice and just, hey, everybody listening to this, myself included, Elnian, who's a trainer included, we don't train enough. We get all hot and bothered and do a nice training. Yay, everything's wonderful. You've got to do it so frequently. If you're going to make customer service a priority in your business, every time you guys meet, we've got to do some batting practice on it, and we've got to remind ourselves on it until, again, people on your team are able to say, yeah, I know the 3 steps. Boom, boom, boom. Because, again, when they're able to, they have that memorized, and they continue to practice it, now we're on to something. And what you were saying right before that of, we can't assume that everybody knows what's going on in your head. I just see that often in my coaching of somebody kind of complaining perhaps about a team member. And I'm like, have you told them that? Have you set that clear expectation? Like, this is your fault, buddy, or ma'am. So when it comes to customer service, especially in the remodeling business, if I'm somebody who is a craftsman and an artisan and somebody that uses their hands and does amazing work, chances are I haven't been immersed in wonderful customer service training. It just hasn't been part of the business classes I took in college or whatnot. So we've got that's part of leading a wonderful organization is making sure that we're training everybody on our team, and they'll thrive as a result of that.
Yeah. It becomes the default. It gets hard to turn it off, right? Like I have a hard time, travel a fair amount. We go all across the country doing training. Not using the 10-4 with people is really hard sometimes, but like it becomes the way that you interact with people, which is a great thing.
But it is the burden that you carry.
It is the burden that I carry. Streets of Manhattan, making eye contact and smiling at people. I do manage to rein in the verbal breathing usually, but
there you go. Cool. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that knowledge. I feel like we delivered some nuggets of value. And again, in the show notes, you'll see it. Or if you go to ZingTrain.com/training, you can see the various trainings that ZingTrain offers. And Remodelers with an S, Remodelers 23, will get you 20% discount.
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.